Good. So, well, welcome to Kopernik, everyone, this evening. We have a very exciting program called A Year in the Life of Beekeeping. We'll get started with that in just a moment. Hello, those watching on YouTube tonight as well. This is we call this on YouTube our Friday night live stream. When you're in person, it's our Friday night program. So, this is showing our website here. Let me get that. Kopernik.org is where you can always learn more about upcoming programs. We list the most immediate ones, like tonight's, on the homepage. So we also have Race to the Stars tomorrow, our 5K up on the hill. Don't worry, the racers will not be running up Underwood. They will be doing the more gradual grade if you were to keep going along Underwood here. Especially, that's good because tomorrow's like 90 degrees. Now, Astrofest is coming up as well on Saturday, June 11th. You can register online. That's probably the best way to do it. And there you'll choose your rocket. You'll purchase a rocket from us, either beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And then we will get that rocket to you. Either you can come up to Kopernik to pick it up. We already have them in stock at this point. Or we'll do a pass-out session at Barnes & Noble, probably next week. Then on June, you build it at home. That way you have all the time in the world to assemble it and also paint it and decorate it. That's always something that we felt is rushed when you do it here. So this gives you all the time to do that at home and get your perfect rocket. And then on June 11th, we hold Rocket Fest where you can come up and actually launch your rockets on our site. If it's a smaller rocket, we launch it right outside. If it's a bit larger, we go down to the field that you passed coming up. So that's always a very exciting time and a lot more relaxed as well when we aren't focused so much on building and we're just focused on launching safely. All right, now of course I always like to point out at the very bottom of our website we have the clear sky chart. And the clear sky chart will show us an astronomical view of our forecast, the parts of the sky that are important for viewing those celestial objects. So mostly, really what you'd love to see, the ideal, is dark blue across the board. But dark blue in like cloud cover means at least there's some chance, and it looks like maybe there's still a chance for tonight. We will see if it clears up after the program, and if it does, we'll hunt down some objects out there. Tomorrow looks good for those racers that are coming up, so they'll have an observing session hopefully as well. But always use this tool if you want to get a sense of what our skies will look like. Yep, there's our upcoming. I will mention that this upcoming Friday night program next week is from Triple Cities Makerspace. So you can learn about some tools we have available in the southern tier to make things of all kinds. So that's next week, again at 8 o'clock. The last thing I'll show you, on our YouTube channel, you can see we're actually streaming. Well, actually, no, if I refresh the page, you'll see we're streaming this live right now. So we have the live icon on this tonight's stream. And I'll also mention we do have a time lapse of the lunar eclipse available from our recording on Sunday night. So that was a really fun event, and now we took that 5-hour long footage and we sped it up so you can watch the eclipse in a minute and a half or so. So you're welcome to check that out. But I think without further ado here, I'm going to get the presentation loaded. There we go. And make sure this works. Yes, it does. Okay, so I will pass it off to Dr.
Thank you.
You want the light switch? Do you want it dark in the front, light in the back, or?
Maybe light in the front at some point. I mean, is this going to video okay?
That's
I
fine.
mean, we can do this for now. You got my show and tell stuff is sort of later on in my presentation. This is okay with me for now. How's that? I'll try to stay out of you guys' way. So, probably the burning question is, from most people is, so what in the world made you think it'd be cool to hang around thousands of stinging insects? You know, so how did I get into beekeeping? Well, the short story is that I got into competitive home brewing and got into this beer judge program, and it was, all these competitions included, and I mean, this was decades ago, before the two words craft and beer were even in the same sentence, you know. And so besides all these different beer styles, the competitions also included hard cider as well as mead, which we know is kind of like honey wine. So I got into making mead, and then I thought it would be cool to make mead from my own honey. So the next thing you know, I'm standing in front of a bunch of people talking about beekeeping. And I started in 2009, and I got involved in the local bee club here, the Southern Tier Beekeepers Association. You know, of course, everything takes their COVID twilight zone. That's kind of put the brakes on a lot of meetings. And I've got involved in the state organization, and somehow I managed to get myself, I was named president for 2022 of the Eastern Apicultural Society, which is the largest nonprofit beekeeping organization in the country. Covers states east of the Mississippi, eastern Canadian provinces, and one of their three mandates is to hold a 5-day-long beekeeping conference. This year it's going to be in Ithaca, at Ithaca College. So we'll see if this, so far so good. There's a ton of experienced and seasoned volunteers to make this thing tick. I may not, so far, I still may raise my hand, you know, again, but it's been pretty smooth so far. So, I'll talk about the bees first, and then go through sort of what happens during the different seasons of the year as far as the bees are concerned. So, basic honeybee. Well, you may or may not know that some people consider them invasive insects. They're not native to North America. All of these are European honeybees, and this gives you a sense of who lives in the boxes that you see, or who lives in the hollow tree. Relative sizes. So there's a difference. You know, honeybees do not hibernate. They cluster in the wintertime. They reduce the population and kind of ball up and shiver their little muscles to generate heat. They don't heat the whole house up, they just heat up this cluster. And in the summertime, a full tilt hive that's fully populated, can have 40,000 to 50,000 bees in it. You know, worker bees do pretty much everything. The queen she's the egg layer, and the drone his job is to mate and pass on the genetics. So, what do? Well, the worker bees from egg to an adult bee is 3 weeks. So, I don't know about you guys, but I would say when I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, you ever sat through one where whoever's the presenter read everything that was on the screen? Oh man, that makes me want to pull my hair out. So I don't do that.
It's called death by
I'm operating under the assumption everybody here can read.
It's called death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, death by PowerPoint. So, see, they don't live very long. They're females, but here are their tasks, and this is pretty interesting. They do all the work, and this is the majority of the bees in the hive. So as soon as they come out, they go through metamorphosis. You know, they're an egg, larva, pupa, they spin a cocoon, and then they come out. So they stay near where they came out, clean up their own cell first, and do other jobs inside the hive, including taking care of the queen. And then the very last job they do is food and water. And the interesting thing, if you stop and think about it, this is the most dangerous job in the whole hive. Everything else is inside, and now they're going to fly out. I mean, the bees can fly like 3.5 mile radius. you know, looking for pollen, or even, you know, or nectar, or even farther, if things aren't so good out there. Which speaks to why people say, oh, yeah, I want to plant some flowers for the bees. Well, they may or may not go there. You know, they're opportunists. They get, the word gets out, and they share the information that, hey, the good stuff is over this way. The queen has the shortest development period. She's key, she's critical to the existence of the hive. Her job, she lives for years, and it's a little bit shorter now, and there, you know, a lot of good research is being done on honeybees. A lot of it was triggered by this colony collapse disorder that came around a few years ago. And what they discovered, that there's so many chemicals that are all over the place, that has an impact on the bees in that respect. They're finding, you know, one of the studies I saw was they found 21 different pesticides in pollen from one flower. In some cases, even DDT. How long has it been since that stuff was even made? That's been many, many decades. Maybe a farmer's got a stash in his barn, you know, who knows. So the queen's job is produce eggs. She lays eggs all day long, produces pheromones that sort of regulate the behavior of the whole colony. Now the drone, so here's where there's a little bit of gender humor in beekeeping, right? So this sounds pretty cool. The drone, the queen's the most important, so she is produced quickly, right? From egg to queen is a lot shorter time. And this is longer than even the worker bees. They live a few months. What's this guy's main job is to mate with the queen. Other than that, he's hanging around in the hive, watching bee football, you know, he's not contributing other than just hanging out. So that all sounds pretty cool, right? The guy got it made. So now, thing is, his job is to go and mate with the queen, and typically a queen is going to mate with an average of like 14 drones. And it's done in a course of 1 or 2 flights, because, you know, you see how long her abdomen is? She stores all the sperm in there so that she can lay thousands and thousands of eggs for years. So, thing is here, you know, they mate in midair, and in the process, it kills the drone, and he drops to the ground dead. So it all sounds like a pretty cool life up till then.
What kills them?
Well, specifically, their genitals explode.
Ooh.
Oh, of course you can.
That's you asked. So just to give you an idea of what happens in an active hive, and there's another photo I think is a little better. An egg, teeny weeny, and then the brood goes through different stages. And beekeepers have a term for this, where it's in the pupa type stage, is called the purple eye stage, because it's old enough when the eyes are starting to develop and they actually look purple. So the main thing a beekeeper looks for when they're working the hive, I mean, it's going through their hive, is to see if it's queen right. There's no such thing as queen wrong, but queen right means that the queen is active and doing something, what she's supposed to be doing, which is laying eggs. When I first started, I never saw my queens for a year and a half. And I think it's a pattern recognition thing, that 5-year-olds don't have all this stuff in their brains that us adults do to get in the way. Kids can spot the queen right away. But I knew that the queen was there because I could see the larva, even though I could not always see the eggs. So 3 days an egg, and then it becomes a larva for maybe another 6 or 7 days. So this is my own photo, and this bee here recently emerged. It's one of the coolest things is you can watch them come out. So if you take a look, these are capped honeycomb cells here, and you see these are all pretty much the solid pale yellow color. And if you go down here, this one looks kind of dark. So that means that the bee that's inside of there must be chewing its way out. And sometimes you see a little tiny hole, you know, and you can see them right there chewing their way out. But in something like this, you can take your hive tool and kind of peel that back and check them out. So it's really cool. Where does all the wax come from to build a honeycomb? It comes from wax glands on the underside of the bee. It takes a lot of energy to do this, so it happens. They can build honeycomb like crazy, like right now when they call it the honey flow, when there's a lot of nectar. Right now there's a lot of things that are blooming. This is my hive when I started out in wintertime. I lived out in West Windsor. Electric fence charger because there are bears out there. This is the basic setup of a hive. And this, you know, if you look around the world, they're all like hollow logs, and you remember the traditional skep where you see like a coiled up rope kind of thing. Go ahead. You have a question?
Why is there a part called the queen excluder?
Well, do you know what exclude means?
Keep away from, keep out of.
Keeps her out, yeah. So there are some cases, the queen is bigger than worker bees, so a beekeeper might want to put a queen excluder here so that the queen stays down here. So that excludes her from moving up into this other box. So there's
Why
some.
do you want that?
Well, maybe there's certain ways to. One of them is it's a way that you can help find the queen. If you're looking for her, you know that then she's only going to be in this box. And it also stops her from maybe going up in a box that's farther up, because that's where the worker bees will be making honey. And you don't want the queen to be going up and laying eggs in the middle of where the honey is. Good question. And I have some of these parts over here we can look at. So this was created, this whole beekeeping thing is based on the concept of removable frames. And this is invented by this guy, L.L. Langstroth. He's a reverend back in the early 1800s and came up with it. The whole thing is predicated on what's called bee space, where everything is based on pretty much a 3/8 inch openings, because anything that's larger than that, the bees are going to build comb in it. You know, they'll fill it up with something. And if it's too much smaller than that, they're not able to get through. And then this makes it easy to get the honey out. And also, if you need to examine them, an important thing is to look and see what's going on. And are there diseases? Does it look like the queen has been there? So, summertime is pretty hunky-dory, and they store honey away in here, and the diligent beekeeper is not greedy and take it all, because the bees need some to eat during winter. So like I said earlier, they don't hibernate, and so this cluster of bees will move around throughout the colony, eating up the honey that's stored in there. And then, so like in November, there is a period of time when the queen stops laying eggs, but then starts up again, usually like in early January. And the interesting part here is that the population is increasing, but the food supply is dwindling. So it's up to the diligent beekeeper to go in maybe towards the end of January, and either you can just lift up a box, does it feel empty, or does it feel like it still has a lot of honey in it? And keep an eye on that so that you can feed them. Typically, you can feed them. It's going to be dry in summertime or spring. You could feed a kind of a syrup, a sugar water. But in the wintertime, you don't want to introduce additional moisture into the colony. And you can feed fondant, the stuff that's like a frosting, or even just granulated sugar. Put a piece of newspaper down, dump some sugar on top of it, and the humidity in there that actually make it all clump together and stick. So, in a warm winter day, I call it like a t-shirt warm day. The bees don't poop in the house, so they wait for a warm day and go out. But some of the bees may not be as strong as the others, and you know, they get tired and land in the snow and get too cold to take off again. So this is an example of a cluster, and you can see that there is still some snow on the ground here on this sunny day in March, and all the bees are in this area of the box. What I want to point out here is that the hind legs on honeybees have these features that are called pollen baskets. So when they collect pollen, they stuff them into these baskets, and that's what you see there. So that's about the size of a mouse turd, for lack of a better description. And then this is this is where they're doing some activity here. If you look up here, you'll see some orangey type colors, and that's where they bring in some pollen. And down here, where it looks shiny, well, it is shiny because they're putting nectar in there. And so bees have a separate honey stomach where they ingest the nectar, and in the honey stomach, it gets mixed with enzymes that will help turn it into honey, but then it also has to be dried, and so you know, it's considered honey when it's down to 18% or less moisture.
They spit it out?
Yeah, yeah. So this is, you know, different plants all have different colored pollens. There was an interesting story a few years ago about, you know, there's beekeeping in New York City, and a guy was complaining that all of his, you know, his honey was like this really bright red color. They didn't know what the heck it was. They didn't know where it came from. Finally figured out that the bees had came across a maraschino cherry factory, and they found a way. You know, they send their scouts out, and they say, "Come on, it's the party's over here." So this is what it says here. This was a transition. You'll see in the next slide here. So these were adjacent frames of honey. And what's interesting here is that, and I can't remember which was the first one, but here's sort of the transition zone where whatever was producing this darker honey, you know, or else I don't know which happened first. I can't remember. But one of them, you know, was either starting or finishing. And you can see this sort of this boundary line up close. And this, you can see the wax caps on there. And this here, where it looks transparent, it's called wet cap. That's just a name for it. It's not wet. And this looks white because there's a little bit of an airspace under it. And it's just dry cap. Wet cap, the wax capping is directly on top of the honey. This is the first swarm that I ever caught. It's about the size of a pineapple, about 15 feet up in a tree. You know, how do you get honey out of the comb? So this is over at my bee mentor's house, and you know, this is called an extractor. Basically, it's a centrifuge. This one has a motor on it. You can get one that's hand cranked, and it's not too difficult to crank. So what has to happen first is you have to scrape off or remove the wax cappings, and then that lets the honey fly out once it spins around. and when it comes out, it can be strained. Strain out any of the bits of wax that might still be left in there, bead parts, things like that. Other pieces of equipment would be a smoker, and so, you know, beekeepers tend to be cheapskates, so I thought I'd get myself a deal on a smoker on eBay, and I think by the time I paid the freight on it, I could have bought a brand new one. But this one's great. I've had it, I don't even know how old it is, but you know, I've had it since I started in 2009. So the whole idea behind smoke is, you know, the bees communicate by pheromones, basically by scent, and so this confuses or blocks that. And so they, you know, particularly like the alarm pheromone that calls them basically to, you know, attack who was ever annoying the hive. You don't need a lot, a little bit calms them right down. The well-dressed beekeeper. So I have and you're welcome to come up and play with this stuff later on if you like. So this is my jacket. And so most of this stuff lasts forever. So it zips up, has elastic in the cuffs, elastic around here. This was freshly laundered about a week ago, but there's some, you'll see some of those yellow bee poop stains on it from being out in the wintertime. And gloves are handy. Sometimes barehanded is good, depending if the bees aren't ornery, the weather's good. Other times, if you're going to be doing something that's really disruptive, you might need a little bit more protection. Or a lot of times, I like what Michelle has on, something like these basic disposable, you know, vinyl gloves. The thing is that the bees can sting through these, but a lot of times what you're working with is just plain really gooey, and it gets into your fingers, and it's hard to get out. And then when I first started, I was not sure if the way I swelled up after I got stung was normal or something I should be worried about. So I went to a beekeeping conference and listened to a presentation by a guy who was a beekeeper who was a transplant surgeon, of all things. You know, transplants are all about allergic rejection, you know, reactions. So what he said was, you know, I found out that, I was not in any danger of an anaphylactic shock or anything that serious. But what he did say was that if your blink reflex works straight on, but not from the side, and if you get stung in your eyeball, there's a 50% chance of blindness. So I see beekeepers go out with, you know, nothing on their heads, and, you know, it just, I was mowing the lawn a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I said, I can mow really close to that hive, and that big cloud of bees that's out front won't even notice that I'm there, right? I got stung right in the end of my eyebrow, and it looked like I was in a prize fight. And it hurt too. All right, where did I put my pointer? And then let me find where I put my clicker here to move forward. Oh, that's not a good sign. Check my pockets here. I'll check my pockets in the jacket. There. That's one of the reasons I one of the other tools, the primary tool the beekeepers use is this. I think it originally was a paint scraper, and they make really great, you know, if you're ever doing like work around your house and have to remove molding or something like that, man, these are perfect for sliding under there. Everything is sticky or gooey. You need to either pry things apart or scrape. So I decided that, you know, I'm a tool guy, and it always ends up the tool I want is over there. And now I got tall grass to contend with, so I came up with this, I created this Beekeeper's tool belt with magnet on it. A couple of magnets. So that works out pretty well. And you can get full suits. This is my girlfriend Chris's suit here. So these come with a hood of a various sort that zips off. You get great protection. So one of the things here it's hard to tell from what's going on, but Michelle, there's an extractor, and what she's holding in her hand it's a hot knife. So you can see the cord hanging there, and she's using this hot knife to take the cappings off of that frame of honey. Hive products, everybody knows about honey. That's the main thing that everybody's familiar with. You know, get the pollen. Some people use pollen as a natural supplement. Of course, wax is used for a lot of things, furniture polish, lip balms like chapstick type things. And even this stuff that's called propolis is something they make from plant resins, and they use it to seal up all little cracks in there. And some people use that as make tinctures out of it. You know, apparently it has some health benefits. I mentioned the colony collapse disorder from a few years ago. You know, it's like anything else, you know, diseases and pests. Currently the big issue that bees have to deal with are varroa mites, and similar to the way that you know, deer ticks attach onto us humans, you know, they're not going to suck enough blood out of us to kill us, but they do transmit viruses. And this varroa mite does the same thing. You know, it latches onto a honeybee, and what they recently found out that besides transmitting 8 or 9 different viruses, it also sucks their fat bodies, and the bees build up fat bodies to help them overwinter. And so if you don't keep your your mite level under control, that can account for colonies not making it through winter. Some diseases are not a big deal, fairly minor. There is one that's called foul brood that is the most serious. It's highly contagious, and the only cure is burn, baby, burn. You burn your hives and bury them. So I won some ribbons for my mead. I scored big that time. This is what happens when you become a beekeeper and you say, I'm just going to let my lawn grow, and you know, for the bees, and park your mower. I mentioned this, if you're interested in this, being social, this is a 5-day-long bee conference in Ithaca, and this is our local club. This is a photo from early on. That's me and my beekeeping mentor. Look how I'm dressed. I got, like, you know, dishwasher gloves on. He's barehanded. When I first went out to my bees, man, I was sweating bullets. So I didn't know if I was going to kill them or they were going to kill me. And that is it. Questions? Well, come on up and look at this stuff if you like.
I have a question.
Shoot.
What is it about the smoke that calms the bees instead of panicking them?
Well, it blocks it confuses their sense of smell, or the pheromones that they communicate with, and it causes them also gorge up on honey. So I don't know, somebody said it's because they think there's a forest fire and they have to vamoose. I don't know if that's true or not.
What fraction of the honey they produce do you extract? Because you gotta leave something for them to eat. Right?
Yeah, and it's sort of the other way around. The guideline is to leave like 70 pounds over winter. So a box like that will hold about 35 or maybe 40 pounds. But then and this one is called, this is a medium deep. Typically this would be like for honey. And the two boxes that are below it are deeper, 9 inches and change. And that's typically where all the bees are raised, all the brood or rearing is done. And they'll squirrel honey away all over the place as much as they can. So typically a box like this, and if you have those other two deep boxes there, that should be pretty good. You know, but a lot of it depends on how severe the winter is too. So if it's real severe,
Just throw more food in.
well, but you got to do it when the weather's reasonable. You know, not too awfully cold. Yes.
How do you control the mites?
Well, there are a couple of things that are, a number of things have been tried. I mean, some really nasty chemicals that they end up developing resistance to anyhow. And what they've the most efficient one is a formic acid. So, and what's different about that, they've used, you know, all these nasty chemicals. There's a newest one is an extract that comes out of hops. And you know, it's out there. I've heard mixed reviews, but the thing is with most of these, the way that the mites work is that when they evolved with the bees, so they can sense, you know, the larva is getting aged enough where it's going to be capped over, and so they know when that timing is happening. So a female crawls in there and gets capped in with the larva. And so the first egg she lays is a male, and then the rest of her are females over, you know, a couple days apart. And so then once that bee matures and the cap comes off of that, then all this, you know, there's no more mites being released into the hive. None of the pesticides penetrate that wax cap except for the formic acid. And so at least that can be considered, you know, organic's not necessarily good, but at least that penetrates in there and is more effective because of that. And it has a short half-life. If once it's done, it dissipates pretty quickly. Where some of the others leave a residue that can linger for a long, long time. And it's best to, you know, you count, there's a way you can count them. Monitor, it's like diagnose before you treat type of thing, and then test again to see how effective you were. Question in the back.
Does any of that acid or pesticide, does that have an effect on the bees as well?
Say that again, please.
Do any of the pesticides or acids or whatnot, wouldn't that affect the bees as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest problems. With the case in point is where, like out in, you know, Iowa cornfields, they coat the seeds with you know, with pesticides, and they use these air drillers to go and you know, it's mass production farming. But what happens is when they go to plant the seed in the ground, that this pesticide dust comes up and gets in the air, then blows around, blows outside the cornfield, you know, to where it lands on the flowers and the bees can encounter it then. So that's common, or some of them are systemic. The neonicotinoids that made the news, they're systemic because it's a seed coating, and when the plant grows up, it ends up being absorbed throughout the whole plant.
Do you know how the bees can navigate 3+ miles I mean, they're gonna go over a hill or two and past tens
Yeah.
of thousands of trees, I mean.
They
it's
do,
complex.
dances. There's the waggle dance, and it's, you can Google it, there's a couple of them. And the waggle dance is, it's oriented towards the sun, and then it's something to do with the loop that they go and shake their tail gives them an idea of how far. And one is, I forget exactly what the distance is, one is like, it's closer than 150 yards, and the other one is like, it's farther away. So, yeah, I'm sure it's more complex than that.
They have to fly out at a specific time of day if they're going by the sun.
Yeah, they fly like 15 miles an hour or whatever.
So when they go out and come back, how long is their round trip for an individual bee? Are they out there for an hour or?
That's a good question. I don't know. But part of it is going to depend how far they got to go, right? And if they fly 15 miles an hour, they don't bring back very much nectar. They can't carry very much. And I forget what it is. There's how many flights it takes to make like a tablespoon, but it's a lot.
Yeah, chemistry-wise, the sugar in honey, is it all sucrose?
No, it's a mixture of fructose, sucrose and fructose. And I think there's some other honeys or sugars in there as well.
There's also minor amounts of some other nutrients in it?
Yeah.
It's not exactly health food, but it's better than like table sugar.
I guess, I mean, it's still kind of, it's the blend. Some people like honey because of flavor, but also people have allergies. If you can figure out when you have like plant-related allergies, if you get honey that was produced when that allergy was active, then that's going to have some of that pollen in it, and then you can, by eating a little bit every day, you can desensitize yourself. That's what I've been told.
The professionals, the industrial honey makers must grow desirable plants next to their hives, so that they can get a consistent type of honey. As opposed to just letting them go out and bring any old pile that's kicking around.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about like the big honey producers will go out, they move their bees around to whatever the fields or crops are.
Right.
And I know the almond trees in California are big. I mean, California style, right? Do everything big to excess. They planted so many almond orchards. Of course, then you need more water, to irrigate them. Then you don't get displaced any of the native pollinators, and there aren't enough, so they got to ship thousands of colonies from the East Coast in February to pollinate. And then the migratory beekeepers will move. It's like chasing the bloom. Blueberries bloom earlier in the Carolinas than they do around here. You kind of follow that up, and then there's cranberries and up in squash and melon crops, and that's one way to do it. It gets you a lot of honey.
If you put more empty boxes next to your hive, will they gradually get populated?
That's a good question. I don't know. It might. If there's
there's got to be some way you can generate more bees.
Yeah, you can do a split like what happened here. You can take a hive and basically divide it in two. One will still have a queen. One of the ways that the commercial beekeepers make money is by selling bees. To start out, get like a half-size hive called the nucleus colony, and use that to start a full-size hive. Or if you're just doing a split where you end up with a chunk of bees that don't have a queen, you can buy a queen that's already been mated. And that's one way of controlling the genetics that you get.
The bees will accept a foreign queen?
Yeah, you can't just throw her in there. She's in a queen cage, a little a little box with a screen over one side of it, more or less, and you put her in there in that for a few days, and they'll get used to her. If you just throw her in there, they'll kill her. But you let her hang out in there for a few days, and you can tell when they've accepted her, and then you can safely let her out. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's artificial insemination and bees, and you know. Yes.
On TikTok, there's this woman who is constantly rescuing bees that are swarming in places where they're inconvenient.
Yeah.
And she never uses a bee costume or anything.
Yeah.
And what she does is she finds the queen and she puts it in a clip.
Right.
And then she puts that queen in a hive that she brings.
Yeah.
And then she scoops up the bees in her bare hands and encourages them to go in there. How does she survive that? How does she get away with that?
When the question is about a swarm and how can you stick your hand in the middle of them, that's probably when they're the most docile, because they don't have a hive to defend, and they're tanked up on honey because they're full of honey, because wherever they go, the first thing that they have to do is build honeycomb so the queen can get laying eggs again. And I've caught swarms before, and I've heard of people who can stick their hand in and feel the queen or whatever. And on a normal hive, I always tell people that when you open them up, it's not like a sci-fi movie where they're going to glom onto your face, right? And I've done extractions from buildings. I would still wear, it just takes one bee to kind of ruin your day. And she could be filtering the stuff she's putting out there live. The extractions can be a pain in the butt. I did one once. I mean, you have a bee vac, so you can suck up the honeybees with a shop vacuum in such a way that they're not getting the full suction that's going to squish them, right? You suck them into another screen box in between. So that's one way, and they're busy flying in and out, and suck them up when you're there, taking the hive apart. I would still wear something. I got a call. I'm a real estate guy, and I got a call from somebody who said, "Oh man, I just bought this house, and I got bees up in it, up in the peak, up in the roof." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." He said, "Well, it's way up there." He told me where the house was, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I showed that house to some buyer clients of mine." And the guy's saying, "Oh yeah, man, it's a mess. The honey's dripping out of the ceiling and running down the wall." So I can't help it. I mean, it's way up, way up, and you got to do some major surgery to open that up and clean it out. If you don't, it's going to be a bigger mess. In way back there.
So a long time ago, when I was in high school, in the late 60s, I won a science fair in New York City, and one of the winners, and I was invited to a symposium in Columbia.
Cool.
All on communications, and one of the speakers spoke on bees and how when the bee comes back to the hive, it does a dance, and it tells the other bees what direction to fly, how far, what's the quality, what's the quantity. It does all that in this ritual dance.
Yeah.
That was, but that was going back again a long time.
Yeah, Google it, and you'll get the waggle dance, and it'll come up on YouTube.
I think they're also supposed to see sky polarization.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Themselves.
Yeah.
Royal jelly, is that food for the larvae? Because I know humans can consume it too.
Right, and I've tasted it. I don't see the big. I had to taste it. He's talking about royal jelly, and it's like high octane baby food.
Okay.
So, and they feed that to the queen. That's her full diet, and initially it was thought that that's what makes her a queen, and they discovered there's some other aspects that I can't remember. But then I think that the worker bees get a little bit of royal jelly also. But it's not sweet. It's not anything like honey. No, it doesn't, I mean, like, what I tasted, it didn't really taste like anything.
Yeah, so I was curious, I see ads for it once in a while, like on an ad or something.
Yeah, you know, a lot of stuff comes from China because they got, number one, it's labor intensive, and you don't get that. I mean, you get maybe, I don't even know if you get a quarter of a teaspoon out of one. So that's a lot of bee resources to, you know, to do that. You got a question?
Yes, hand.
Your turn.
You have a question?
I would, how does the workers make a queen bee a queen bee?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And you know what happens is that if here's a good example. When when the queen swarms, she actually lays an egg then, right? And then the worker bees will come, and once it hatches out, they make this stuff called royal jelly, that is a really strong baby bee food, and that's what makes her become a bee. If something happens to the queen that, you know, maybe she got hurt and can't lay eggs anymore, then they can take and they can create their own queen. It's called an emergency queen, and that's on the side. The emergency queens are going to be here because they'll take one of the eggs that was laid, or a larva, a little tiny larva that was here, and then they'll rearrange the wax to make it into a queen cell, and they'll feed that one that they wanted a queen royal jelly.
They make a bigger cell.
Yeah, yeah. So, and they stack the odds in their favor by making more than one queen, too. And the first one out usually kills her sisters. Queens have stingers, but there aren't any barbs on them. You know, worker bees, their barbs, it's last resort, because when they sting, they die. They have barbed stingers, and the venom sac has muscles on it that sticks in your skin.
Right, so these honeycombs are reused by the bees, right?
Correct. Yep.
So they'll build one, put an egg in it.
Yep.
When the bee comes out, then they'll start using it to hold honey?
They might.
Or they might just put another egg in it?
Correct. Yep. That worker bee will clean out the cell, and it depends on it. Even though there's like certain, it depends on the needs of the hive, and even in the worker bees' jobs are somewhat fluid. Also, it's primarily age-related, but also depends on what the needs of the hive are. It's sort of the hive mind, so to speak, dictates that.
Each bee is like a neuron.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
What has happened 20 years ago or more? We heard a lot about like the Africanized honeybees or the killer bees or whatever.
Yeah.
What's happened with them? Have they just blended into the population?
Yeah, you start asking about the Africanized bees. They're a tropical bee, and they just, the word is highly defensive. You know, it doesn't take much to set them off. And what they discovered was that in the tropics, they're a problem. But if like in South America, like maybe Colombia or a place like that, you know, if you're down by the coast, they're ornery. It's all get out. You move them up to a little more temperate climate, and they mellow out. But there are studies have been done on bee genetics, looking for this kind of stuff, and so they do find some Africanized bees, maybe like in Florida or in you know, Arizona, New Mexico, in the really southwest where it's really warmer. But it tends to get bred out real quickly. You know, sometimes, and so it's not a big problem, you know, because it does get bred out. You might get some bees that are crankier than usual, but that can happen anyway. You know, so you know, because I think that the statistic is that because of the number of average males that a queen bee mates with, you know, each bee only has like 7% of the gene pool, so it's a minor That's why it's a mix of bees. Maybe some bees in the hive are better at getting honey, others are better at, you know, doing stuff in the hive, and altogether they get the job done.
As a sort of related follow-up question there, someone from our chat here, their username is only in Antarctica. They tend to frequent our streams, and they ask, how concerned should we be about the giant hornets destroying beehives in North America?
Good question. Again, this is as far as I know. I mean, you know the news. It's anything that is sensational. My understanding, at least the last time that I looked at it or heard anything about it, was that they found maybe 1 or 2 in the state of Washington. So that's all that I know about it. There are probably, I would think that, you know, there are probably bigger things to worry about.
All right.
Other than honeybees, what other type of bee species do people go and raise?
There are some bees that are called mason bees, and they're solitary bees. If you go to, I think Agway's starting to carry like mason bee houses. They tend to live in tubes, and humans can't harvest anything from, but if you have gardens, they might be beneficial. That type of thing. And other than that, that's all that I know. In New York State, there I think there are over 400 different species of bees, and some of them look like flies. And I mean, we've probably seen them and don't even realize that they're actually bees.
So there's not very many bees that actually produce honey that's marketable.
Say it again.
There's not very many bees that produce honey.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are different species of honeybees.
Yeah, more like different strains. There might be some. I just read something about Bhutan over by Nepal, and they actually have stingless bees over there. So, you know, I don't know why they're not over here.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Feel free to come up and check the stuff out. I'll hang around.
So how many pounds do you put out a year?
Here, come in, check this out.
Yeah, how many pounds do you produce a year?
That depends. I'm a little guy,
Right.
so statistically, I'm half a dozen hives on a good day, and for the first time in doing this, I lost all my bees. I came out of winter with 0, and so I've been rebuilding. Last year I didn't get any because I put it up, let them keep it and build it back up. I'm going to say probably the most that I've ever gotten is maybe like 100 pounds.
You can make friends with that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Make great gifts.
It's good, yeah, it's good wampum. Yeah, and meat, I use about 15 pounds in it, you know, 5 gallons of
Find
meat.
somebody who makes wine or beer and
Yeah,
trade.
yeah,
You still making meat?
yeah, yep.
Did you ever hear of Miss Broom Honey Queen?
What's that?
Did you ever hear of Miss Broom Honey Queen?
No.
Okay. I was camping at a local park many years ago. A
Are you
beekeeper
gonna be a
showed up
scientist someday?
to give a talk. And he had this little girl who was dressed up and she had a ribbon. And it said Miss Broom Honey Queen.
Oh.
Apparently local beekeepers appointed her.
You asked some of the best questions all night.
But apparently I was wondering if that tradition.
No, I've been involved in a local club since 2009. I haven't seen it. I know, I've seen the National Honey Queen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they used to have one.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, when I joined the club, it was maybe 24 people, you know, in 2009. Then eventually it grew. We used to meet at the Cooperative Extension. You know, it really was around like two tables shoved together. And ultimately ended up at the town of Shenango Community Center there with, maybe 80 or 90 people showing up.
Wow.
You know, then COVID Twilight Zone happened.
Yeah, but that's what he said.
Yeah, can you look at the bees over there?
Well, they're still out there, right? We just don't see, right?
Yeah,
Can you look at
yeah.
the bees over there?
We started meeting again, but it's been up in Berkshire. It's a little bit out of the way for people.
Oh, excellent.
Well, thanks.
That's patience.
Yeah, thank you. They hope, try to not make it boring.
Oh, no, that's right.
It was really cold. I noticed you had some like bubble wrap insulation around the hive.
Yeah.
Can you just, I mean, would it be beneficial to have a higher R value, like just to build a thicker hive or something?
Yeah, and you know what? I've tried everything. I mean, I used like rigid foam. One guy, the guy who ran like maybe 60 hives or so would put 4 together and then wrap them with house insulation or just fiberglass and black plastic, leaving openings so they can get in and out. And there are companies that make polystyrene it's a couple inches thick.
Yeah.
So that's, but the main thing is they block the wind and keep them dry. So that's why it's important to mostly insulate the top, because if you get condensation in there and it drips, it's like us. You go out and get wet when it's cold out, then it's not going to be good.
So in the wild, they would just find a hole in a tree, probably?
Yeah, yep. And I actually got a bee call from somebody. It was on the north side of Johnson City. They cut down a tree and found out, they cut it down and they realized there were bees in it.
Yeah.
But
Where's the
there's
bathroom?
You know where it is.
Cornell owns a forest that's out like towards Newfield from Ithaca. It's Arnott Forest. And that's been, they've owned it forever, and so that's been used. This guy Tom Seeley is a big deal in like bee research stuff, and he studied that. It's been documented for a long, long time, and just what's going on, the natural dispersion of beehives there. So when this colony collapse thing hit, and they thought, man, it was really a lot of bees, dying off. They saw that happen there, but then also they saw the rebound. And part of it was, I mean, it's, they're never going to be tamed, so you can't tell them like domestic, but managed bees, it's a little different story, because, you got bunches of them together, and you go out and conduct their own devices, they might be a half a mile apart. And,
Sorry, ma'am,
so
just gonna
that helps
give them a
disease and
live stream a shot of some of this stuff.
swarming does. It breaks the brood cycle.
Yeah. So have bees been making a comeback then from the colony collapse, or?
Yeah, and it's still a challenge. I mean, the old guys I talk to say, yeah, all you had to do is go out and get the honey. And now it's like, one of the guys, you ever go drive up Route 12 to Oxford? And if you go up there, you see a place on the right that has all these colored boxes piled up. That's Chuck Kudick. They've got a beekeeping supply store, and he runs maybe 10,000 hives. And he says, yeah, it's not so much about being a beekeeper, it's more about being a mite killer. So that's the biggest issue for beekeepers, is darn mites.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Would it be possible, as soon as everyone's done looking back there, to bring the observation hive up front so we can get a quick shot of it?
Yeah. You know how many people tune in remotely?
So it looked like we had a steady 20 today.
Oh,
so,
yeah?
Yep, that was a pretty good stream. So yeah, those in the live stream, we're going to bring the observation hive up front so we can give you a shot of it before we wrap up here.
I'll try it on?
No, is sure? Okay.
So this is, See, they're starting to build wax on here, make honeycombs, and some of these have more honeycomb. And once it gets big enough, then they can either put honey in it or they can lay eggs for the queen. And then all this stuff here, this is, it's kind of gooey, and it gets everything all stuck together. There's, the beekeeping sayings. I'm a beekeeper, everything I own is sticky.
It smells good.
Yeah. And then this is, they just put more, here, smell that.
Here's some wax or something.
There's yellow stuff that's capped off.
This is propolis stuff they make from the tree resins, and they use it to seal up, they'll seal up little cracks. It's their own climate control. It's like, the wood isn't a perfect fit or airtight, so they can seal it up to suit themselves.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and this, I put a piece of screen. This is typically used for it has a specific purpose. I think a bee escape where a bee can get out but can't get back in. But when I was transporting some bees, I stapled this piece of screen over it, and they ended up propolizing it. So it means they didn't want that. They didn't like it, so they covered it up. Yeah, pretty interesting. Did you see the smoker? I like pine needles.
Oh, that smells good, I'll bet.
And when you squeeze this, it poofs out smoke.
I don't have any way to look up the registrations, unfortunately, at the moment.
It's an oldie.
I wonder if I can read the
But it works.
It works, yeah.
Nice.
I had to replace, I'll probably have to replace this again. I mean, this is about the only thing that wears out.
Yeah.
The bellows.
Oh, okay.
Pretty cool.
Actually, it's probably all I need.
Do you still make your mead, or?
Yeah, I've got to make some. I want to, this EAS conference is coming up the first weekend in August. I want to make some to enter the competition there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm behind schedule.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming by.
Sure.
Are you involved here?
Yeah, I work here.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yep, I usually teach school groups during the week.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I'm Friday. Actually, I presented, was it last Friday I presented? Yeah, I was the presenter last Friday.
All right.
I just did one of our, solar system tours,
Yeah, neat. That's
yeah.
cool. Where do you live?
We live in Appalachian.
Yeah. Well, you're close by.
Yeah, with the back roads here, we're really
Oh,
close,
yeah.
That takes us about 15, 20 minutes. So.
Nice. Yeah, I live in Johnson City, up behind the schools there.
Okay.
Yeah. So where I have my bees, it's not urban, but it's not really rural. It's just like housing development. It's 30 years old, and I keep my hives there. And actually, right now, there's this. It's one of these shrubs that was sold as being a conservation thing, and it's invasive. It's crazy. It's autumn olive, and it's blooming now, and it's just I can smell it. And it's a lot of these invasive plants are important honey sources. They're nectar sources for bees.
Okay.
Like that. Japanese knotweed. People call it Japanese bamboo, grows all over the river. Yeah,
we've actually got a lot of that in Appalachian.
Yeah, and it's hard to get rid of. But in the fall it blooms and it makes little tiny white flowers, and the honey is like dark molasses. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it's amazing when I first saw it, it came out of nowhere. It's near off of Main Street in Appalachian.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. I was just in Conklin today, driving by the river, and it's this tall already.
Wow. So the bees can use that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yep.
We got a lot of bees out of the house.
We get bees. Yeah.
Good.
Well, at my school, we have bees, and the kids in my class try to kill them.
Ooh, yeah.
And I always tell them, I don't think you want to do that, because when the other bees find out, you're gonna get stung.
You're gonna get it back. Yeah, yeah.
And one time they were trying to kill it, and I stopped them.
Good. Good for you.
Because I really like bees, and they're one of my favorite animals.
Oh, that's cool then. Yeah, good for you.
And she protects dandelions. Like my mom's always like forgets to start eating them, and it's like when they're yellow, you gotta, don't pull them out. And I guess in Washington State they have something called no mow May. Is that right? Where you don't mow.
Oh yeah, I heard of that. Yeah.
So we're a dandelion, security.
Yeah.
They help cure like cancer.
Dandelions, again, got a lot of red dandelion leaves and have a lot of medical.
Oh yeah. People eat them. Yeah.
And do you make meat out of dandelion? Have you done that? I mean, I think they use dandelion for wine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just whatever honey is that I get, it's usually wildflowers and a mix.
Yeah.
But you can get it. One of the things that you can get. Let me think of one. I like basswood. It comes from a tree.
Okay.
It's like water clear, and really good. And I had this big idea at one time that, because you can't control where the bees go, but you can get the honey tested, and they can identify the percentages of pollen in it. And I ended up talking with this guy from Texas A&M, because I thought, I want to be able to do this. And he said, well, I applaud your efforts, but, you got to have like a key, it's like key, what plant is this, and microscope, and not only that, but the pollen represented in the honey varies. It's not the same from pollen to pollen. And he said, send us a sample for $50. We'll figure it out for you.
Okay.
But he had some interesting stories. There was one where some heavy equipment was being shipped to India from England, and big wooden crates or whatever. And when it got to India, they opened it up. The crates were full of dirt. So they looked at the dirt and found out what kind of pollen was in it, and it was from Cape, in South Africa, Cape
Horn?
Yeah. And so they figured it's something, they pulled the old switcheroo in a dock down there.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm going to bring the bees back so I can put them on live stream.
It looks like it's just single.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I know it looks like you can put a bunch of it into this one. It is just a single stage.
It looks like they're
I know. You probably could retrofit it.
6 engines?
That'd be crazy, right? You might lose it. All right, I just need to quickly record. It's Stanley. What's your last Hunter? Hunter, you said?
Can I do a bee maze when you get home?
Do you ever react to your candle? Or do you ever react to your testing glasses?
Well, he's not really. I mean, he's been, I've lost a little hearing in my left ear, just sudden onset thing. But when you open up the hive, and they're busy doing their thing there, I think that, whatever, like raging or something, if you just put your hand real close to them, they'll move out of the way. They might do that here.
Not saying we should open it up in here.
Here.
Sorry to bother again. Could we bring that up front on the table there? Just get a quick shot
I
of it.
want to stick this online.
I promised the chat there.
No, that's fine. Yeah, just pull one of these, or pull that jacket out of it. Which side?
Either. Probably do.
This one might be clearer.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, those in the live chat, we're going to show you the observation hive. Show you the live bees. Okay. We'll give you a minute to enjoy those, and then we'll wrap up the stream. Yeah, still 10 people watching.
What is this?
Oh, it's a ring light. So if we ever need extra lighting, when we're just doing a regular live stream, I think it works.
Oh, that's what I thought, yeah.
I must not be plugged in. But yeah, that's all it is. Still.
And that works pretty good?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Works well enough.
I was thinking about getting one, I do enough Zoom meetings from home.
Oh, just get the extra detail. It definitely helps. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching on our live stream tonight. We will see you on the next one. Look out for some scheduled live streams coming up in the next couple days. They'll be posted on the channel. See you soon.